All right, so now we get to introduce our guest speaker for the evening, Craig DeRoche, that I met, how many years ago? When he was the speaker, a legislator, and also the Speaker of the Michigan House. And I know that he and I worked on some things together. I don't remember all of the legislation, but I do remember that Craig was a force to be reckoned with, and Craig was a dynamo, and you don't get to be Speaker of the House unless you have some chops. So very excited about that. And then after that time, he had some serious issues that he had to deal with that I'm sure he's going to talk about tonight. Ended up in a very difficult situation. And you know, during that time, found Jesus Christ and his life was changed, turned right side up, not upside down. And met Chuck Colson and went on to serve with Chuck Colson in prison fellowship. Worked for many years in the justice reform movement from a Christ-based perspective. And just this past January, he became the new president of the Family Policy Alliance, which is the existing state organizations that are part of the old James Dobson Focus on the Family network that goes all the way back to the 90s. And Craig is now serving as the national leader for that organization. And by the way, our three partner state organizations are all members of the Family Policy Alliance, which is kind of cool. And I think they have a total of 40 of those organizations around the country. So who knows what God's going to do, right? But when I met Craig earlier in the year, I said, man, we got to reconnect. And by the way, I have to tell this, because the lady who was on the search committee was our friend in Wisconsin when they were looking for a replacement. And so she knew Craig was from Michigan, and so she called me and asked me, did I know Craig? And of course, I gave him a glowing review, which is, I'm sure, the reason why they offered him the job. And if not, I'm taking credit for it anyway. That's just the way it is. But just very exciting. And Craig, just as a man of deep faith and really loves the Lord. And he lives very close to here, actually, and didn't have to drive too far to come. And he graciously accepted my offer to come and share his life and share what God has for us tonight. Let's welcome Craig DeRoche.
Thank you. Am I on? Can you guys hear me? Good. I have a hearing loss, so I got to check that every now and then. Well, I'm going to take you guys through a fun story, and it's going to explain some things, and hopefully I can enlighten you and have you walk out of here tonight, if I'm successful, with thinking exactly 180 degrees differently than you do right now. And I'm going to give you a secret to the universe that I believe is very spiritually correct. And I'm going to explain that how and why to you. And for those of you that are students in the room currently, and those of you that have graduated, I want you to listen, because this is something very important I learned in my life. I'm going to explain how I got this knowledge. That you got to learn from other people's mistakes, because you're not going to live long enough to make them all yourself. All right? I am going to say some things that are tough to listen to up here. It's not going to be any foul language or any inappropriate things. But it's okay to laugh like you just did, okay? Because I'm up here. I'm breathing. I'm happy. I'm married to the woman I married, that we had our children together, and we raised them. We're celebrating 2 of them in college, and our marriage has never been stronger. But I do want to share with you a testimony of how I got to learn these secrets that were free to me. As most of you know, in Scripture, the lessons are available for free. But for a lot of people that are human beings, it costs you what to learn that lesson? Just about everything in this material world, doesn't it? So my story goes something like this. I looked this way to people. I graduated high school locally, Walled Lake Western, at 17. I moved out of my house. I went to Central Michigan University. I graduated in 3 years. I was 20 years old. I was named the Outstanding Student Leader by the President. I got involved in business. I started insurance and software companies. I was moderately successful and really to where the businesses ran themselves. And I got involved in politics. I was elected to the Novi City Council twice. When I ran for state representative, nobody ran against me, Republican or Democrat. And that was at a time when those seats had unlimited or free health care for life, as well as, I think, a higher salary than they make right now. I'm sorry to say that, Representative, but it was pretty gaudy back then, is what I'm saying, and it was surprising. Nobody even ran against me. And then 2 years later, my colleagues, give me a woot woot there at the table, guys. These are my colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats. For some reason, God had a plan. They elected me Speaker of the House. I was 33 at the time. I was 34 when I took office. I had a full head of hair. I was 6'5", and this is what happens when you take a job like that. So I served there, and then I had the privilege of serving as a minority leader after I was Speaker. You don't want to do that. It wasn't much fun, but my colleagues on the Democratic side, they're nodding their heads. They were good sports. There was a camaraderie then and a fellowship that may or may not still exist, but we certainly had it. And what people didn't know about me, though, is that, so flash forward, I leave office with term limits, I go back. I'd given up a higher level of income, and I'd promised my wife, we're going to be fine on the other side of this. I'll go back into business. But nobody knew. I had it. I suppressed it. But the truth was, I was addicted to alcohol from a very young age. And when I say addicted to alcohol, I mean at 10 or 11 years old. By the time I was 14 years old, I would have the symptoms, people that are addicted to a drug or alcohol, that they shake and they sweat and things if they don't have that drug. I had that when I was 14. So it wasn't just a situation where I was maybe doing it a little bit too much to be healthy. And I wrestled with that my whole life. But God gave me this ability to do this stuff in school and in business and everything else. And I thought, one of these days when I get everything else organized, I'm going to deal with that. I'll get around to it. But it's too busy. I got too much in front of me. I've got to do this stuff first, and then I'm going to make time to worry about that. And I tried, and I didn't drink every day when I was in the legislature. I did what's called white knuckling it, and I'll explain what that is a little bit. But I knew when my colleagues elected me Speaker that I couldn't actually do that job and drink. So it wasn't like I served all those that time drunk, but I still I told you I'd say some funny things, and it's okay to laugh. Jennifer Granholm called me after I got arrested in 2010. That's a good transition. I left office. And I go out and I do the business thing and everything else. But what you have to understand about addiction, and this is important because people like me that understand what it is are different than the people that are learning about it on TV. What they say on TV actually is it's getting better, but people don't know much about it. So the way addiction works is you always pick up where you left off. We say to people that are new into it that you become a pickle. You can't become a cucumber anymore. So if I went back to drinking today, I would want to drink what I used to drink 11 years ago. Understand? Now, the reason why alcoholics don't die is because I can't drink a liter plus a pint like I used to every day. I said that right. I'm not exaggerating. And people wouldn't know people didn't even know I had a drink. That's what I'd built up to over 29 years. Opiate folks that get involved in drugs, your body doesn't shut you off like alcohol does, and you fall asleep and you wake up with a headache and you can rethink it the next day. You'll do what you did before and you'll die, right? So that's why drugs are so dangerous. All of them are. Alcohol, nicotine, everything is a drug, is dangerous. But so when I went back to drinking after I left, I was in the throes of addiction like it was where I was before, right? So I got picked up for drunk driving. Jennifer Granholm, I'll finish the story. She just called me and said, not only have I never seen you drunk, I've never even seen you with a beer in your hand. And I confessed to her after that first arrest that just simply wasn't true. But I wasn't ready to tell the truth to other people because of my pride. And I just wanted to explain it away, that it was a bad day and I was out of character and I had a business meeting and all this other stuff. And it was in 275 newspapers. And it was very crushing blow, and I thought, that's all I need. I need that pain. I need the embarrassment. This is going to get me on the right track. I'm going to actually take this time and I'm going to care for myself. I am going to fix this. I'm going to do it, right? Like a self-help thing. 4 months later, I got arrested again. Because you can't fix things by yourself in this world, can we? And God had a bigger plan for me. I didn't know what it was. But the second arrest, 4 months later, violated my probation. I had a 92-day suspended sentence. I was supposed to leave out the back door of the court, which means you're going to jail, not home, right? When I went in and I talked to the first judge. But what I did after I was arrested the second time, I went into rehab for the third time in my life. And they were going to kick me out because I was sober when I checked in. Now, I was sober when I checked in because I was living in a jail room floor for the previous 2 days, okay? And that invalidated my insurance because at the time, hopefully it's been changed in Michigan, you had to be on the drugs to qualify for insurance when you went to rehab. So this is policy that I'm talking about here. And I knew that was coming. My wife, for all the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, was uncertain about our marriage and made that very clear. I was facing 93 days in jail. All my clients had fired me. And I was in 575 newspapers. I was that guy. You know, if you turn on any news thing, there's somebody that blew up their life that day, right? The Charlie Sheen, Lindsay Lohan, of the day. That was me twice in 1 year in 2010, right? And then he did it again, like across Fox News. And I said that to somebody. I said, well, I can always, maybe go to business in China. And they said, they get Fox News in China, Craig, you're done. And so I was outside in between classes. Rehab is not like a hospital where you're walking around with like a IV in your arm or anything like that. It's like a boarding school. And so it's in between classes. And the whole world had collapsed. Everything that I thought I had valued was gone. And my marriage was in jeopardy. And Child and Family Services was actually calling on me. I have no problem admitting these things now because I'm glad they all happened. It allows me to bear witness. And I closed my eyes. I didn't even clasp my hands. And I said, God, I've been trying every day since I was 10 or 11 years old not to drink the next day. And I've never been able to do it. And I've tried everything that I can think of. I've read every book. I've tried everything I can do. And I've lost everything that I thought mattered in this world. Everything. There's nothing. I'm not employable. I don't have a marriage. I'm going to lose my house, everything. And I said, that doesn't matter. None of it matters. I don't even care if I get to see my kids. I would rather get to see them a decade from now after being sober than to drink again tomorrow. And if you'll just help me stop drinking, I'll do whatever you want. And I opened my eyes because the speaker called class. And I walk in, and the guy that's the administrator for the hospital, the rehab, says, Craig D., because you're anonymous in there, right? And I said, yep. And he says, I need to talk to you, and I'm figuring they're going to kick me out of here because I knew my insurance was going to cover it. And he says, I need to talk to you. And I said, fine. So we go in a side room. He says, I know who you are. And I said, right, I'm Craig D. We all have name tags. And he goes, no, I know who you are. And I said, oh, that. I didn't want to announce myself, like when I came in here. And he says, well, I was driving in this morning. I was listening to the Frank Beckman show. And I'm like, and he goes, I'm not trying to embarrass you. And he goes, but they were going really hard at you. And he said, I just had this overwhelming feeling that you might be here. And so I got in, I looked in the computer, and sure enough, you were here. And you were Speaker of the House, and you do all these other things. And you might think of us, because we work with Medicare and Medicaid and everything, that we comply with government regulations, as just a hospital. But we're actually part of a Catholic healthcare system, and our board of directors are literally nuns. And we pulled up your case file, and we looked at this again, and we brought the doctors in and the ministers and everybody, and we all came to one conclusion: that God has a bigger plan for you, but you're not going to see what it is unless you stay here and learn how to be sober first. And I was crying like a baby. I couldn't even breathe. You know, when you're a kid, they scrape their knee and you're like, what happened? What happened? And they can't, and they can't tell you what's going on. That's what I'm doing, right? And I'm heaving and everything. And he's, I know you're going to say that you got to deal with the court case. And I know you're going to say you got to respond to the media and you got to try to save your marriage. But I'm telling you, and I finally caught my breath. And as he was talking, James told me to say this. And it's in a book, by the way. And everybody has to take a copy of this book. It's a very gritty memoir about addiction that's in the back. And I moved this week, and I don't have room to bring them home. So you're all bringing a book, and I'll stick around and sign them for those that you want. I'm not selling anything, and they're all free. It's in the book, too. Powerful testimony. As I caught my breath and I looked up at him, I could see behind him like an invisible blackboard with scroll written on it. And it was all this stuff that I had done wrong in my life. And many of the things I didn't even remember doing. And I got an instant awareness of it. So this guy's talking to me. I can see this and I have this awareness. God is real at that moment, folks. Our Lord is alive and he knows us personally. Personally. That's what I got to see. That's what I got to know for the rest of my days on this earth, that Jesus Christ did what they say he did, that he is alive, that he knows us, he cares about us. He did not throw me into the fire. He did not treat me with my brothers who are justices here. He did not treat me with justice. He treated me with mercy. And I still don't know why, but praise his name that he did, that I can be alive and that I can bear witness to that. And I said to the guy, I said, that isn't what I was going to say. And he goes, what were you going to say? And I said, I think I just said the very first prayer that I've ever said in my life the right way about 2 minutes ago. And I said, as far as I'm concerned, you were sent by God himself, and I'll do whatever you want. And I stayed there, and I soaked it up, and I started learning from people from that day forward. And I'm telling you, it's been a tough road. You know, I'm going to transition. I'm going to talk about some other stuff. But I can say now, 11 years later, that what I knew in that moment, God removed what I had in me from when I was 10, 11 years old, root and branch. Root and branch. He has that power. I'm a different human being, born again. And I started talking about that as the media was following me around through my court case because the prosecutor wasn't done with me. The second charge wasn't even me breaking the law. It was just a made-up thing. It was politics, local, Novi politics. I don't even need to go into it. But the prosecutors, we've all learned what prosecutors do. They don't like to lose. There's no check and balance with them. Sorry for my prosecutor friends that are in the room, but it's true. So she prosecuted me for 2.5 more years through 4 courts. I couldn't talk to any of my friends on the Supreme Court because I thought it was going to end up there, but it ended as a published opinion in Michigan. And as the media followed me around, I just said, I'm going to bear witness because as I learned from the 12-step program, the 3rd step prayer, God, take me and build with me what you will. Your will, not mine. Take away these difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to your power, your grace, and your way of life. Not to make my life easier or more comfortable, but to let other people know what's available in you. And that's what God started making available that day. And I got to watch it all play out in surreal fashion in the courts and in my marriage and in my relationships with other people that I had broken. And so I just kept bearing witness. And that's where people said, you got to meet Chuck Colson. I never even heard of him. But I kept hearing that. And he had heard it from a couple of people. So we finally met. He hired me the first day I met him. He told me to drop my net. He said the exact same thing that guy in the rehab said to me. I got back. He set me up. He was a crafty. I love Chuck Colson, by the way. And what a great privilege it was to be mentored by him. We only had 7 months together, but man, the stories and the mentoring that he did. But the first day, he sent me down to the Senate because he said he was too tired. It was not. I won't say Chuck is a liar. God rest his soul. He was indulging himself. He wanted a break. But what he was really doing was testing me. And when I came back, he said, what are you doing? And he said, I think God's got a bigger plan for you, but you're never going to know what it is unless you stop what you're doing and come to work for me. And my chills went up my spine. I knew the Spirit was there between the two of us. And I went home thinking my wife would bail me out. saying Chuck wants me to fly around the country and do his thing. And she said, you're a different person than I'm married, barely recognizable in the best possible way. You need to follow the Lord. You need to go to work with Chuck. And I did that for the better part of a decade. And then I was telling Madison, what a great speech by Madison earlier. And some others that were talking around there when we were taking pictures over there. I'm like the Forrest Gump in Christendom, right? So I go from destroying my life and becoming nuclear to God giving me a promotion where Barack Obama has me doing the Easter morning prayers. Seriously. You know what I mean? Like in other things where I'm this conservative, crazy, right-wing extremist Speaker of the House in Michigan, where I'm working with them and I'm working with all these other people. And I had a Cleveland Cavaliers play prisoners in a Cleveland prison, Grafton prison, and Fox Sports 1 cover it. I'm not making this up. This is in February 2020, just before COVID. It was delightful because the NBA came in and said, we're worried that the prisoners are going to give the NBA players COVID. And it was the best smackdown I've ever seen in my life. The lady who was the warden there said to the NBA person, well, these people haven't left here in years. So we're more worried about you giving the prisoners COVID. She said, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I shouldn't have said that, you know. So the game went on. And it was on Fox Sports 1. And I went on a prayer weekend retreat. And you know, I was focusing on a one-word sermon, if those of you have read that book. And it was trust. And I got an unmistakable word from the Lord that I was done at prison fellowship. And I'm a guy that argues with the Lord still on that. So, hey, are you kidding me? Didn't you see 2 weeks ago we were at the prison? The Cleveland Cavaliers, Drummond, for crying out loud, is dunking in a prison. How could I be done? But I got the call that I was going to move upstream. And I didn't know what that was, but I knew that I needed to be obedient. And so I phased out. I consulted with Prison Fellowship last year and was invited to apply for the president and CEO job of the Family Policy Alliance, which was founded by James Dobson and focused on the family. So when I showed up for the interview, I literally teased them and I said, well, if you guys hire me for this and I spend 10 years here, what am I supposed to do? Go from working for Chuck Colson and working with James Dobson to like the Billy Graham Ministries or something like that, you know? But it's been a real treat, and it's been a privilege to be able to share that testimony. And most of all, it's been an honor to be able to use my experience in public policy and my personal failings in what the Lord did in addiction in that lesson that I told you that I was going to teach you now. I think I've got a few minutes left to teach it. For the students in the room, came from a 6 to 12-year-old, I got to check myself, I'm a recovering politician as well. 6 to 12-year-old class that Betty Ford put on it, the Brighton Center for Recovery. If you guys ever have a loved one that needs help, the Brighton Center for Recovery here in Southeast Michigan is one of the top 3 locations in America that you can send somebody to. And Betty Ford and Hazelton work with them, and my kids were in this class for 6 to 12-year-olds, and I'm 39 years old. And they had them paint these rocks, you know, with words like fear and jealousy and pride and anger and things like that. And we came over after they were done painting the rocks, and they had the burlap sack that they picked one of the kids to carry. And then they bring the parents in and they say, who had a fear? Well, I'm afraid of tornadoes. Great, put your fear. I'm afraid of hurricanes. Put your fear in the bag, you know, the rocks. Who has jealousy? My sister got a bike and I didn't. Great, put your, you know, rock. Pretty soon the kid can't carry the bag. And the instructor teaching 6 to 12-year-olds says, okay, this is why your parents are here. They've been putting rocks in their bag their whole life. And they didn't know how to get the rocks out of their bag. So they learned that drugs and alcohol would make them, so the rocks in the bag they were carrying, they didn't mind so much. And it worked for a little while. But then it didn't work so much, and so they had more. And then that didn't work so much, and so they did more. And then something bad happened that because of the drugs and alcohol they kept taking more and more of, it started putting rocks in the bag faster. But they didn't have any other solution. They started they started drinking more and putting more rocks in the bag faster. So they're here to learn how to take the rocks out of their bag, to give them to Jesus Christ, and he can empty the bag for them, and they won't need to drink or drug anymore, because drinking and drugging is not their problem, it's their solution. And they need a different solution. How's that for changing your view of things 180 degrees? And that's what I got to do working with Chuck Colson at Prison Fellowship. When they said to me, when Chuck was called home to glory, what are you going to do with criminal justice, the board of directors? And I'm not taking credit for what's happened in the last 10 years, but I said, I want to be a part of something. It's not pass a bill, it's to change the entire national conversation about something. These are human beings created in the image of God. Hurt people go to a prison. Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people, think about that. Hurt people hurt people. You want to solve it, you got to get in there. You see the light of Christ shine the brightest in the darkest places, right? So the way we look at our world right now, what is the problems in America, according to the news, according to the politicians that currently hold office, present company excluded? We have a divorce problem, don't we? We have a suicide problem, don't we? We have an abortion problem, right? We have a crime problem. I could go on. We have an obesity problem. Are those problems? No. Abortion's a solution. Suicide is a solution. A divorce is a solution. People don't have a murder problem. They're trying to solve their problem by killing somebody else. A radically different view that God brought into my view about my own life and my own brokenness has helped me as I reach out to my brothers and sisters that are still in office and in Christendom to take our perspective and that scriptural truth and that hope out there. As you see the adults, for the students in the room talking about this, let them know they got it backward. The solutions you guys are doing aren't working, and you're stacking solution on top of solution on top of solution, right? That none of them will work. They're not based on truth. They're not based on the reality. And if you get back to, like we did in the justice debate, a semblance of the values at the core of it and the foundation of what you're going to talk about in public policy, then you have a hope. If that person is created in the image of God, then you're going to treat them entirely different even if they're never going to leave prison. And Republicans and Democrats can do something. Our foster care system is a solution that is failing. There is 25% of people incarcerated at a minimum came from the foster care system, when it's 0.4% of our population. 60 to 80% of women saved in sex trafficking came from our foster care system. Our solution doesn't work. Look at the education public system. That's a solution, right? That parents couldn't do on their own. We got to have different solutions. The problems are the same. Our problems are fear and pride and anger and jealousy and selfishness and things like that, self-centeredness. And we as Christians know our way out of the woods. We know what our solution is. Our solution is available to us. And through the education, I'll give a little bit about what I do now, and then I'll get off stage because I got the 5-minute hook, which I think I'm actually doing pretty good on. Family Policy Alliance, thank you, is in 40 states. We have about $30 million a year, closer to $35 million a year. Of all the organizations that make up what we call the Family Policy Council Alliance. More than 325 employees, dozens of lawyers, more importantly, 40,000 churches that are engaged on a weekly basis to try to change America for the better. And God, rather than having somebody that accepted Christ in third grade and married his sweetheart and didn't make any mistakes in his life lead it, put a guy like me in that position. And it's very humbling. It's very humbling. And to be able to come here to be able to share freely with you who I was at the time when you knew me. When we met James, I wasn't a bad person. I don't believe in that. I think people make bad choices. I think people do stuff. But I was a different person, for sure, for many people in the room. But to be able to share with you the testimony of what Christ did in my life over these past years and what he was doing all along, but how we can come together in an organization like the Student Statesmanship Institute, and how people like me and you in the room can pour back into people so they don't have to make all the mistakes I made for those 29 years, or the mistakes that you made when you're teaching the class, or volunteering to bring them along. God bless this organization. God bless all of you for supporting it. I hope you'll continue to. I am the new leader of an organization that got its start in the late 90s, maybe a little earlier than you started, but not by much, just some years when James Dobson started it. And I know it's very challenging for a new leader to come in and accept the reins from those that have gone before him. So I hope that you shower your support on Joe and the rest of the team as they transition, so they can transition well. Because I can tell you, the kids coming up are a lot wiser. They're having to grow up earlier than we did when we were kids. And that this organization is a great big hope for me and my wife and so many others. And I hope that you continue to strongly support it. I'll be sticking around. And remember, all of you, I moved this week into a house half the size of my other house. Anybody tries to leave here without a book, you're in trouble. God bless you all. Thank you for letting me share with you.